Coming up on We Talk News this week, the race for 25 is back on. New Hampshire's House tables the latest adult use bill, and that state's hope for legalization gets delayed indefinitely again. We have reaction from a disappointed advocate in the Granite state. Plus, there's mold and pesticides in some California weed and vapes. Independent tests prove it, and the LA Times and Weed Week breaks it. LeVannaa Vassau has more. A congressional House committee strips banking protections from a larger spending bill, another slap in the face to safe banking initiatives. And Trulieve is fined $350,000 for not providing a safe work environment in their Holyoke, Massachusetts facility that cost an employee her life. And NFL veteran edge rusher Randy Gregory is AWOL at Tampa Bay's minicamp while he sues the Denver Broncos for reimbursement of medical cannabis-related fines of $500,000. And Massachusetts issues a state waters waiver so weed can be transported to Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard this summer. All that and coast-to-coast cannabis news on We Talk News with Alaina Pinto. Next!
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to We Talk News, Pro Cannabis Media's weekly roundup of cannabis news from coast to coast. I'm Alaina Pinto. Ever since Ohio became the 24th state in the U.S. to approve the legal adult use of cannabis, many advocates wonder about which state might become the 25th. Well, every week there seems to be another step forward, but in cannabis standard time, there are also two steps backward. This past week in New Hampshire, it happened again. The House of Representatives there pulled the plug on an adult use bill that had ping-ponged through their legislative process and many thought was ready to be approved and sent to the governor for his signature. There was hope by advocates that the governor's wishes for state-run dispensaries to match their state-run liquor stores would pass, but instead it was tabled or postponed until the next legal session. Well, here's two New Hampshire reps' feelings about a bill that had some flaws, but still would have at least launched an adult use legalization program.
Is that literally nobody in this body likes this bill. 2 weeks ago, the prime advocate for this bill said, and I quote, "The Senate made this bill the ugliest, most government intrusive, most over-regulated marijuana statute they could mend at the midnight hour." And he was right then, and that statement remains true today.
We have the opportunity today to make history as the 25th state to legalize cannabis, which may tip federal action. There's already discussion about descheduling, and there's discussion federally about changing the status of cannabis within the country. Imagine if your vote today led to that change in federal policy where it no longer was federally prohibited. More importantly, though, today we have the chance to get the ball rolling in New Hampshire. Most of this bill won't go into effect until 2026, which gives us more time to fight about some of the challenges and some of the concerns we have.
Our own New Hampshire insider is Tim Egan, a former House rep from Grafton, New Hampshire, and the chair of the New Hampshire Cannabis Association. He talked with PCM founder Jimmy Young about what happened.
I think that's what surprised me the most was that they decided to table the bill. I think this is why people have issues with politicians, is they don't make decisions or they don't listen to each other. So here they decided to table the bill, not make a decision, and let it sort of twist in the wind. You know, I have always been in favor of legalization because it leads to safety in so many levels, right? We know where the product comes from. We know what's in the product. We know who gets the money from the product. So we couldn't even accomplish that in New Hampshire. So it's kind of frustrating that, you know, they talk a good game about protecting our children and protecting our people. They had an opportunity to start that, and you could always make legislation better. That's what legislators do. Each year they change legislation. So I was surprised that they decided to table it, not take an up and down vote. I'm not surprised by the animosity between progressive Democrats and libertarians in New Hampshire. It's sort of like a big circle. They both meet at the end, which is we don't like government control. Libertarians don't like big government, and progressive Dems don't like the liquor commission's control. They obviously, if anyone knows anything about New Hampshire, they run all the liquor stores, state-run liquor stores. So they were worried about giving more control. Those combined votes led to its tabling.
So now which state will be the one that will take its place as the 25th legal state? Florida and South Dakota, they have it on their ballots in the fall, while others are working bills through their legislatures. No matter what happens next, the 25th state will bring the count up to half of the states in the country with legalization for adults. Well, now we turn to issues considering some of the well-established legal states, like California, who continues to have issues with the quality of the cannabis available to consumers out there. Here's our California correspondent, LeVannaa Vassau.
I'm LeVannaa Vassau from the Bay Sesh reporting for PCM with this week's California report for Weed Talk News. An investigative article published last week in the LA Times, written by Alex Halprin and Paige St. John, called The Dirty Secret of California's Legal Weed, has exposed the inconsistencies of licensed lab reports. What they did was independently purchase 42 pre-rolls and vape products from various dispensaries and had them independently tested at labs and discovered that 25, which is over half of the 42 products tested, positive for illegal levels of pesticides and even plain old illegal pesticides. And some had over a dozen different kinds of those pesticides. This is not a good look on the industry as a whole, or obviously our state industry. And this is something I talk about often, the difference between brands who care about the quality of their products and brands who are simply out to make a quick buck. Practically everyone knows the California cannabis industry is in distress, with major players leaving the state over the past few years for greener pastures, and most of the remaining ones struggling to make ends meet. Many are trying to find a solution. The system has many bottlenecks and barriers, and one thing that could really help would be if we could have more social freedoms, like, for example, cannabis lounges. Last week, another milestone was achieved on that road. AB 1775, authored by San Francisco Democratic Assembly member Matt Haney, passed the state Senate's Business, Professions, and Economic Development Committee, advancing the bill to the Senate floor. However, don't hold your breath, because Governor Newsom vetoed the last version in 2023, stating a conflict with the state's smoke-free workplace laws. Therefore, this version includes an amendment that secures separate cannabis and food areas, and this one does not actually include legalizing consumption lounges, but it does supplement existing lounges, which local governments can allow, to serve non-cannabis foods and drinks and sell tickets for live performances. Hopefully this one goes through, which will bring the state's industry a little more freedom to commerce. I'm LeVannaa Vassau from the Bay Sesh reporting for PCM with this week's California report for Weed Talk News.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis continues to fight the state ballot question for legalization with the Smart and Safe Florida group, who are in favor of it. Both sides are spending millions of dollars in advertising to sway voters to agree with these different initiatives. DeSantis even decided to veto a bill banning Delta 8 THCA products for sale in that state. And he is hoping his actions would pick up support from those in the hemp-derived intoxicating products. Those items are available for sale in convenience stores, gas stations, and smoke shops throughout the state of Florida. A recent Fox News poll showed that the Smart and Safe Floridians are now projected to pass that ballot with 63% of voters in favor of the initiative. This would be considered a severe defeat for the governor. Speaking of governors who love imposing their own wishes against the will of the people, Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin actually vetoed the legalization bill approved by both chambers of representatives in that state earlier this year. We're not sure our Virginia correspondent will ever forgive him for that. In the meantime, here he is, Joe Parsons.
I'm Joe Parsons with the Virginia Cannabis Connection and Pro Cannabis Media's Weed Talk News. Today, I am fortunate enough to be in the beautiful city of Charlottesville at Higher Education with Don and Seth. And they're going to first tell us a little bit about what they do, for the cannabis community. And then we're going to ask them a couple of questions about the 2024 hemp bill and what it means to them and stores like theirs. So Don, first tell us what it is that Higher Education does and how did you get involved in the world of cannabis?
So Higher Education is a contemporary smoke shop. We have everything you need to smoke cannabis, to smoke, basically smoke anything really. We have all your hippie clothes. We consider it like a lifestyle store where if you are interested in cannabis, you probably want to come in here and check out the store.
I was going to add also the name Higher Education is really relevant because, there's a lot of misinformation in this industry. And so we're also, part of that light, to bring education to the people and, educate them properly and get rid of some of those
stigmas.
Yeah, and bad information that's out there, So.
And this is one of 3 stores, correct?
One of 3 stores, yeah.
Awesome.
And we also have a mobile store so we can go to festivals and bring all this there as well. And over the years, we've been able to do more and more of that, including Coffee Talk, the podcast, where we actually bring light to all kinds of information and misinformation. And it's just been this wonderful, long, strange trip.
With these proposed amendments, it could possibly not only overturn the THCA market, it could also overturn the entire CBD market. What are your thoughts?
I feel like this is, again, government officials passing laws without understanding the repercussions of their actions. In the 2018 Farm Bill, they didn't intend to make THCA legal because they didn't even understand what it was or the possibility of it. So they passed the Farm Bill. Then, here we are, we're all coming up with ways to enjoy this bill. And now they're seeing us enjoying it a little too much and they're trying to take it back away. And I think it's an unfortunate situation. I'm not surprised by it because they're not getting enough, control over us with this. And I think if they take it away from us, they're going to be able to give that much more to the medicinal dispensaries, which I believe, have our politicians in their pocket.
Yes. The worst thing is that once they opened Pandora's box, they couldn't figure out how to close it again.
That's right. We definitely have a market and we're going to be here with or without THCA. We're going to be here with or without CBD. However, it has been a lovely addition to our inventory. It has made so many customers happy and people are able to find things that are, been well tested. Everything we carry in our store goes through a testing process. We can show everybody all of the COAs so they know exactly what they're getting. They know exactly how much CBD is in it. They know exactly what the percentages of THCA are. They know exactly what chemicals were made and or not, used in growing it, which is really important because otherwise you just don't know what you're putting in your body.
Well, folks, there is one question that I wanted to ask you before I wrap this up. I hear that you 2 are comic book characters. Tell me a little bit about that.
We are. We were at a cannabis festival a number of years ago, and we were fortunate enough to meet Jeffrey Peterson, who is a longtime Marvel comic book creator, and for whatever reason, he met us and came up to us and said, "Can I turn you into a cartoon character?" I think it's because Seth looks so funny, but just saying.
He actually said it was the smiles. He's like, "Oh my God, the 2 of you just smile from ear to ear." And,
yes, you do.
And yes, you said that he had to put that into comic book form.
And and then we were born into a comic book, and we have 3 of them currently. The 4th one should be coming out by the end of 2024. Seth is Aqualung, and I am the Pack Piper.
My name is Joe Parsons from the Virginia Cannabis Connection and Pro Cannabis Media, coming to you from Higher Education in Charlottesville. Until next time, stay lifted.
Over the past few decades, there have been thousands of studies on the effects of cannabis on a number of ailments, diseases, or conditions. Most of these have been focused on the cannabinoids in the flower. Well, now researchers at the University of Arizona have discovered some of the medicinal benefits of terpenes. These are components that steer the effects of the plant towards focus, relaxing, pain, relief, recovery, and many more. Here's Karen Black with more from Arizona.
I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting with the Arizona Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Those funky smelling terpenes in your favorite cannabis strains may just be the next big thing for chronic pain relief. A study by the University of Arizona, which was published in the journal Pain, found that terpenes like limonene, pinene, and caryophyllene were just as well as morphine at reducing neuropathic pain and without any of the nasty side effects that come with opioids. Apparently, inhaling or ingesting the terpenes didn't work as well as oral administration. While it's exciting news for sure, more research needs to be done to fully tap into the pain-killing powers of terpenes. On the legislative front here in Arizona, there were some interesting developments this past week. Bills to restrict cannabis advertising and to allow for cannabis delivery made progress. A bill to designate drug cartels as domestic terrorists was introduced, and a bill to legalize psilocybin service centers for medical mushroom treatments is heading to Governor Hobbs' desk. Speaking of mushrooms, 4 Arizonans were among 8 people who fell really sick after eating diamond shrooms microdosing chocolate bars, which contain Delta H THC and, I quote, a proprietary blend of nootropic and functional mushrooms, end quote. The FDA is investigating the incident. There's some fun in the sun and heat next weekend here in the Grand Canyon State. The second annual Sauced celebration, which combines barbecue, beer, and buds, will be held in LaVine, Arizona, Saturday evening, June 22nd. More info and tickets can be found at canatainmentevents.com. That's all for this week's Arizona Cannabis Report. I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting reporting for Weed Talk News.
That'll do it for the A block. Next up, we share a huge 6-figure fine for the largest cannabis operation in the country, and why an NFL veteran is suing his former team for fining him for using doctor-prescribed cannabis. The B block is next as Weed Talk News continues for the week of June 17th. Welcome back to Weed Talk News. This is our B block, or second section of our week-long review of cannabis news from coast to coast. I'm Alaina Pinto. Over the past decade, many professional sports leagues have eased their restrictions on private use of cannabis by their athletes, and some have eliminated the tests entirely. In the NFL, there's now the case of 6-year defensive end Randy Gregory, who is suing the league and his old team, the Denver Broncos. Gregory, who has documented mental health and anxiety challenges, tested positive for THC that he uses for medicinal purposes. Sure enough, that regular use medicinal use has led to fines totaling $500,000. Many NFL teams have just completed their preseason minicamps, and this is usually the time when players are told they will be tested. Usually, if you stop using the plant for 30 days, traces of THC can disappear from your body. The NFL makes it relatively easy for the recreational user to stop before testing at these camps. But what about the medicinal users? Well, Gregory was supposed to be at the Tampa Bay mini camp this week, but he was missing for an unknown and unexcused reason. That has resulted in a $100,000 per day fine from his new team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is only the beginning of the story, but needless to say, nothing is easy in cannabis, even in states where it has been legal for over 10 years now, and tweaks to the original bill will continue. But we are talking about the state of Washington, where Matthew Friedlander tells us more in his Washington State report.
Hi, I'm Matthew Friedlander, coming to you from the owner's office here at Skagit Organics. with the Washington State Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. We just wrapped up a historic week here in Washington State, and my report today is going to focus on a law that took effect on June 6th. This law removes the excise tax from medical cannabis products when purchased by registered medical cannabis patients. Our excise tax here in Washington State is 37.5%. So this is obviously going to lead to a huge reduction in cost for registered patients when they access their medical cannabis products at our retail stores here in Washington State. Now, you may recall that Washington had a medical program in effect long before our current regulated market, but these two systems were combined in 2015. But this caused a lot of problems for patients, as one could imagine. There were less retail stores than there were dispensaries, so less access points for patients. The prices were now higher with all the taxes that were levied on these products. And there was just less availability of medical style products than there were previously. The patient community and many organizations, including the Cannabis Alliance, have lobbied our legislature for over 5 years for the removal of this excise tax, presenting this as a solution to many of these problems. Washington State had one of the lowest participation rates of any state that had a medical cannabis program. We had less than 10,000 registered patients here in the state. There were few products available, like I said, and the prices were very high. So what have we seen since June 6th? We have seen an increase in registered patients in the database. We've been getting reports from stores that many people are coming in with their authorizations and actually joining the database. We have seen a big influx in companies creating medical grade products. My company, Skagit Organics, prior to June 6th, was one of only 3 companies making medical grade products here in the state. So we've already seen that some of these problems are easing and that we are seeing an increase in participation from people in the patient registry and in the medical cannabis program here in Washington State. And we're hopeful that that is going to just continue on and we will see a larger number of patients coming into the system. So that's what I've got for you this week out of Washington. My name is Matthew. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
As we continue to look at different state challenges and news in the cannabis industry, one state that is considered another battleground state is South Dakota. In the 2020 presidential election, that state had both medical and adult use questions on their ballots. When both passed, it became the first state to vote in medical and recreational legalization. But their governor, Kristi Noem, was none too pleased and challenged that 2020 result for recreational legalization and got that thrown out by the South Dakota State Supreme Court. The medical program is now in place in South Dakota. Now, when that ballot question returned in 2022 in the midterm elections, it was defeated 52 to 47%. But advocates are hoping the third time's the charm this fall when legalization of home grow of 6 plants and possession up to 2 ounces and 16 grams of concentrates is back on the ballot. According to a poll of 500 South Dakota voters this past week by the Cheisman Center for Democracy at the University of South Dakota, cannabis legalization for adults was defeated again, 52% to 42%, with 7% still undecided. Still, advocates are hopeful that the turnout for this presidential election will bring enough pro-cannabis voters to the polls and get their ballot question approved. No such problem in Nevada, where Tina Tasaka reports from this week.
I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies, and this is the Nevada Report for Weed Talk News. Well, more news on Planet 13. Planet 13 Holdings is a vertically integrated multi-state cannabis company. And today they announced the appointment of David Loop, the former Chief Executive Officer of VidaCann LLC, has joined Planet 13 Board of Directors. As reported last week, Planet 13 has made a major acquisition of VidaCann in the Sunshine State, and there will be a massive growth of Planet 13 in the state of Florida to expand their empire. David has a deep knowledge of the cannabis and horticulture industry. He spent his entire career in the horticulture industry, including CEO of Loop Nursery. He was instrumental in founding VitaCann and spearheading its growth into the 9th largest Florida retail network. David Loop was nominated by VitaCann to join the board of directors of Planet 13 as part of the acquisition of VitaCann by Planet 13. Calling all poker players, save the date. The Chamber of Cannabis Poker Night fundraiser is around the corner, July 20th. It will be a sizzling night of fun with great networking with the cannabis community. Tickets and sponsorships are available. Reach out to the Chamber of Cannabis and social media for more information. Unions in cannabis? Yes, you heard it here on Pro Cannabis Media. Cannapunch Cannabis workers in Las Vegas voted to join the United Food and Commercial Workers Local 711 in order to have a voice on the job and secure those benefits that union contracts provide. This 32-person unit is the first cannabis processor in the state of Nevada to vote to join UFCW Local 711. Cannapunch cannabis worker David Rodriguez Prieto issued the following statement, quote, I'm thrilled to join the other 3 Air Witness locations in Nevada and cannabis workers across the country in this growing labor movement. As the industry expands nationwide, I'm proud to stand with my colleagues, building our power to fight for just compensation and a voice on the job. A cannabis processing job should provide a stable career where workers feel valued and their efforts discussing a contract that genuinely mirrors our daily contributions that make Cannapunch the successful dispensary it is, end quote. That's it for the 702. I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies and Weed Talk News.
A very quiet week in our nation's capital, but not inside both chambers, the House and the Senate, where factions of reformers continue to try to get banking and expungement initiatives approved, only to be turned aside by the partisan politics that plagues our nation's government. Andrew Behringer is our man in D.C., but this week, he's vacationing on Martha's Vineyard. That island is off the coast of Massachusetts, and it got a waiver for legal weed delivery to commence to island dispensaries via international waters. So here's Andrew and his report on that.
I'm Andrew Behringer, and this is the DC area report for We Talk News. In breaking news out of Massachusetts, recent developments may not only help the state, but the future of the cannabis industry at the federal level. In a recent unanimous decision at an administrative order, has been passed allowing the transport of cannabis and cannabis products over state territorial waters. This move comes as a relief to cannabis businesses on Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket, which have faced challenges due to their inability to transport cannabis from the mainland. The order was implemented swiftly to address access to regulated products. In other federal news, the House of Representatives narrowly approved a $883 billion National Defense Authorization Act for 2025 from a vote of 217 to 189. The Senate Armed Services Committee unveiled its own version, which supports the Pentagon's clean energy and climate initiatives. The House-approved NDAA also includes a provision preventing military branches from testing recruits for cannabis despite the White House opposition. Now, updates from Maryland. Governor Westmore will pardon over 170,000 cannabis convictions, making it one of the nation's most comprehensive acts of clemency related to the cannabis plant. The pardons will benefit an estimated 100,000 individuals, primarily from Black and Brown communities who have been disproportionately affected by decades of unjust cannabis laws. Over 150,000 misdemeanor cannabis convictions for simple cannabis possession and 18,000 misdemeanor convictions for drug paraphernalia will be automatically forgiven. Maryland, known for having one of the worst records in disproportionately incarcerating Black people, aims to address racial disparities in the criminal justice system through this initiative. I'm Andrew Behringer, reporting for We Talk News. See you next week.
Well, that'll do it for the B Block this week. When we publish the next section, the C Block, PCM founder Jimmy Young is back with the Bay State report and a huge fine for the nation's largest multi-state operator.
It's a whole new world of weed out there, isn't it? Everyone is learning new ways to titrate, ingest, consume, imbibe, and engage with this plant medicine we call cannabis. Now, let me tell you my cannabis story. You know, I've had 4 major surgeries in the past 23 years and suffer from osteoarthritis with a variety of metal parts in my body and one on deck. Now, thanks to those chronic pain issues, I've been a medical patient in Massachusetts for almost 10 years now. I remember my first trip to a dispensary just outside of Boston, and I told the bud tender I didn't want to smoke it anymore. So I tried edibles, then tinctures, then vaping, and now if I'm going to smoke, I only use the Weegits filtration system. What? The Weegits.com, Weegits, that's weed, W-E-E-D, G-E-T-S.com, is where you'll find the planet's coolest product that cools the smoke from everyone's favorite flower. The guy that started this was a pretty good medical device manufacturer, and he created this maze pipe that cools the smoking process from 1300 degrees Fahrenheit upon inflammation down to just 90 degrees when it reaches your mouth. That's right, 1300 down to 90. That's why this maze pipe is amazing. Now, add in the code of PCMTV and you get 15% off. So just go to Weegits.com and check out the best way to enjoy a cooler smoke with less coughing and hacking and more peace of mind.
Welcome back to the final section, or C Block, for this week's Weed Talk News. I'm Alaina Pinto. In November of 2021, a tragic death occurred at the True Leaf Grow facility out in Holyoke, Massachusetts. 27-year-old Lorna McMurray suffered cardiac arrest from an allergic asthmatic reaction to the dust generated in the poorly ventilated facility in its pre-roll room. Podcaster Mike Crawford broke the story in January of 2023, and 6 months later, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration issued 3 fines to True Leaf, totaling just over $35,000 for alleged violations that related to this wrongful death. Now, this week, the State Cannabis Control Commission issued a $350,000 fine for this preventable death. True Leaf has been cooperating in the investigation, even though they shut down their 3 dispensary operations in the state of Massachusetts at the end of 2023. With more cannabis news from the Bay State, here is PCM founder Jimmy Young.
I'm PCM founder Jimmy Young, and this is the Bay State Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Holy lobster, there's a lot going on in the state of Massachusetts. We've already told you about the fine for True Leaf, $350,000 for unsafe working conditions and allergic screening of its employees. Plus, Andrew Behringer explained that the state has issued a waiver for the legal transport of flower to Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket. Well, now we've got a story that involves a former city official from the town of Grafton who is the subject of a federal investigation for fraud. 49-year-old Bruce Spinney III, formerly the chair of the Grafton Select Board, was arrested by the FBI on fraud charges, allegedly bilking millions of dollars from unsuspecting investors. Now, after Spinney left the Grafton board, he started a company called Noble Manna that was supposed to be a licensed dispensary, but Spinney allegedly used that money to pay off creditors from another business he owed. And now congratulations go out to Jason Raposa of Goodfields Infused Beverages because he achieved a goal that was suggested to him by an oncologist friend. That cancer doctor asked him to create a more potent additive in a beverage form. Regulations for those types of products are supposed to be limited to 5 milligrams of THC, but after being frustrated by a typo in the regulations, Jason was able to actually produce a product with 5,000 milligrams of THC in it.
My friend who's an oncologist, she came to me very early on in the journey and basically said, we need products like yours in the market. We just wish they had just more potency, because again, we're talking about cancer patients, and cancer patients, depending on what you're doing, there's a good chance that you're going to need lots of cannabis. And so, fortunately, we are able to bring out these products now through innovations and technology that we've been able to develop over the years. Whereas when we first started, the limitation of 5 milligrams is a little bit, it's pretty hard to for a lot of consumers, not everybody, but a lot of consumers are over 5 milligrams at this point, to companies like ours to innovate, to kind of like push the limits on some of the stuff to make sure that we're getting what people want out there in a safe environment.
And finally, a happy birthday to Jeff Similian of Low Key Dispensaries in Boston, who hosted a private birthday party for a few of his closest friends at the Mix outside on their patio, complete with music, drinks, a dab bar, and live music with Dorchester's own Latrell James.
Pipe down, baby. Pipe down, baby. All right, now look. Like this, look. Dirty clothes on the floor for the weed.
That's the Bay State Report for this week. I'm Jimmy Young for Weed Talk News.
One of the many fathers who report for Weed Talk News every week is Brandon Jones from Missouri. And every week, Brandon provides his unique style and passion for the vibrant cannabis market in the Show Me state. This week is no different for Brandon Jones, so here he is and his Missouri report.
Hey everybody, it's Brandon Jones with Bee Green Distribution with the Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. And yes, this week we're talking about taxes again, but this time it's in another positive light. If you've seen the numbers that are coming out from Missouri, they are crazy. Over $2.5 billion is what's projected. Over $370 million are going to be taken in taxes for the state just of Missouri in the first 2 years of us being recreationally legal here. They're saying that the first enough this year for the projection is enough to cover the Missouri Health and Public Safety departments themselves, completely funded just from cannabis tax dollars. And yes, Kansas, pay attention. Maybe you could help getting some roads fixed or taking care of other municipalities that you could take, and you could help your people in your state get access to medicine. I had to spend my Father's Day in Kansas, but luckily we can have THCA. So I wasn't without any medicine at all, but you have to be careful and know what products you're taking, because I am obviously not crossing any state lines with any products I am not allowed. But, we got to be supporting our chiefs, having barbecues, hanging with family, and be able to find some way to partake medicine. So Kansas, please wake up. Let's go. Come on. But it is hotter than stuff here, already over 90 degrees, and people are outside finding places to consume. We are trying to get more places inside that we can consume our cannabis near, not have to worry with this 100-degree weather. But they are getting ready to have lounges and consumption places open here in Kansas City and Missouri soon. So everybody you have a wonderful Father's Day. Hope you got to spend time with your families. And again, I'm Brandon Jones with Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Stay medicated and educated. Have a great week.
On the international scene, voters in the European country of Slovenia have approved both an adult use program and a medicinal program in that country, with voter turnout of 41%, or over 700,000 voters. Slovenian voters approved both ballot questions decriminalizing and legalizing the use, growth, and distribution of cannabis in that country. Now, Europe has over 20 countries who have approved some kind of medicinal reform, like Germany, Luxembourg, and Malta. Those are the only countries who have legalized adult use and sale of the plant. But no matter what happens in the future of reform, the first G7 country to legalize cannabis is Canada. One of the most popular shows in cannabis is Thomas Howard's Cannabis Legalization News with his sidekick advocate, Miggy 420 from Washington State.
Welcome to the Father's Day show on Cannabis Legalization News. My name is Tom. You can find me here and on CannabisIndustryWire.com. We have a big Father's Day show. It wasn't the largest week of news, but there was news that came in. Our lead story, a congressional committee is stripping marijuana banking protections from key spending bills. So let's bring on our co-host.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, Miggy. How's it going, man?
I'm there, but I'm not. Happy Father's Day to everybody who showed up.
Happy Father's Day to everybody who showed up. And hopefully you're having a great one and enjoying whatever dads like to do on their Father's Day. I busted my ass in the yard yesterday.
We got a congressional committee strips marijuana banking protections from key spending bill. Ooh, that was nice.
Now, this is the GOP-controlled House committee bill stripping marijuana banking protections from a large-scale spending bill, and introduced and approved by a subcommittee to include language that prevents federal regulators from penalizing financial institutions for simply working with state legal cannabis businesses. And that was removed. So I guess I don't like you.
Well, this is
to bank compliantly.
Safe Banking Act, right? In a nutshell.
They try. And so that's the thing. You got to get crafty. And then we have another story about some other crafty legislators coming about hemp later on in the program. Mm-hmm. But yeah. And so if this thing isn't going to pass, they try to slip it into other things to see if they can get it passed that way. And what did it meet with? It met with a no from conservative politicians. So, it's one of those where, and it's like infighting in their own program, because this is Representative Dave Joyce, Republican out of Ohio, lead sponsor of the standalone bipartisan marijuana banking legislation.
So this is another reason why it show's so important, why rescheduling is important, right? Because we won't need safe banking if rescheduling happens, correct? Because this will allow for a pathway.
No, yes, no. And so you have to understand, and this is the video that I just did. Unfortunately, it was a little too political for people, so it got a lot of thumbs down, and a lot of people just didn't watch the whole thing because they're like, "Oh, I'm not voting for Biden." I'm like,
yeah.
It's not about that. It's about the administration can change this process, and many of the conservatives tend to hate weed vis-a-vis this. I mean, it's an Ohio Republican that's pretty much centrist saying 40 states have legalized this. We should allow them to have banking. Steny Hoyer, who's been in Congress for longer than I've probably been alive. And so he's a Democrat out of Maryland, and he strongly supports the provision and believes this is the way to get it passed. And they need to get it out on the vote on the floor, but then will it go to the Senate? Because you can't get a bill out of the Senate unless somebody has 60 votes.
Yeah. Well, this again, if you're watching us, you're trying to figure out how to legalize weed, right? You're trying to figure out how we can get to we are trying to get to a regulatory path for this plant. And that's how it becomes descheduled, right? Eventually, I asked ChatGPT the other day, I was like, what is a regulatory system? Because sometimes we tax is bad and all the other bullshit, but welcome to being a grown-up. It's there's a lot of things that we got to do and don't do to survive and all that stuff. But a regulatory system is a framework established by a government or authority to create, enforce, and oversee rules and regulations that govern specific activities or sectors. So this is going to be the cannabis is medicine. Yes, we can all agree. But we need that path to get to that point, because this is more than we have. And if they care about the plant and they care about legalization, stop bitching about what we're not getting and just take what we can so we can keep moving forward.
And finally, this week, some good news from the state of New York. The Office of Cannabis Management now has an interim leader. Governor Kathy Hochul has appointed Felicia Reed as the acting director of the OCM. She is a career bureaucrat in state government, where she worked for the past 6 years in the Office of Children and Family Services. The biggest announcement from New York relates to the growing of cannabis at home for New York residents. Well, now you can grow up to 12 plants at home and have 5 pounds of cannabis on your property. The governor also stated that these rules do not include renters and other tenants in properties not owned by the grower. So rather than lawsuits and padlocks, some good news about reform coming from the Empire State of New York. We love to see it. That's this week's Weed Talk News. I'm Alaina Pinto, and remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly, and we will see you next time.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
What if we're right? What if all of a sudden they discovered that there is medical use for marijuana and that it is good for you and it's better than alcohol and it's better than opioids and it helps your health? What if we're right? What if they find that out?
Specific cannabinoids have medical value. These are facts.
I'm here today in hopes to assist in removing the demonized stigma of cannabis and the perception that cannabis is just about getting high. The true base of this plant has to be known.
I don't think anybody should ever go to jail for cannabis. Get some medicine, and everybody should have access to it.
This is something which, at the very, very least, is the key to alleviating suffering and extending life for millions of human beings. Right? For returning some kind of balance to our society, and quite possibly of restoring our planet's natural balance as well.